George Vanderbilt.
George Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt, yeah, those are the, so the city of Milford at one time had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 employees. How many they got today, Virgil?
About 25.
And the population at that time was what, 1,000?
970.
About 1,000. What is it today?
About 2,800.
So you more than doubled the employees. Jerry?
I was going to say too.
Come on up, Jerry.
Remember all the people that I always was thinking that how many of you people recall the Saturday nights that used to be, you know, I can remember my uncle Hal Clark, and I'm sure most all of you remember him, when he worked for the county. On Saturday afternoons, he would drive his car up and park by the drugstore in the afternoons, so he made sure that Jesse, his wife, would have a nice place to sit in the car and see all the people as they come by and visit and stuff.
George Wallace did the same thing.
When you just think about that, you know, and I always think also of, you know, all the farmers around town, you know. I worked for Bosque Produce. When they first started with produce in Milford, down by where the city park is, Florence Park, there's that little daycare center. In fact, my dad made tile in there, and Bosque's rented that and started their routes. And I always think of working there, and all the ladies, the farm ladies, would bring their eggs and their cream, and you'd have to test that. And when they delivered that, they said, well, I'll be back now in about an hour and a half, and you better have their check figured out, because they needed that money, or they used it anyway, to buy their groceries at Williams & Williams or Jacobs or something. They used that egg money and stuff to buy what they basically didn't raise on the farm. But boy, how times have changed, you know. The stores, like Jacobs store, I always recall so many people, older people, saying that is one store that they really miss, because the ladies back then made their clothes for their children, or knitted, made blankets, quilts, and just stuff like that has just all changed, you know. So there you go.
I can talk loud enough, they can hear me, I think.
Nope, can't hear you. Got to come up.
Oh. Be a deacon here.
Yeah, I think at one time, I was thinking about Milford, I think they had about 5 gas stations, at least 3 or 4 grocery stores, drugstore. At one time they had 2 drugstores.
You talk about how times have changed. Marion remarked we had 1 police officer. And today, if you need a police officer, you dial 911, and they're usually at your house in a couple of minutes. Well, back in the old days when Stan was a cop, all the phone calls came into the utilities office. And if it was at night, the way we let him know that he had a call, he had a yellow light bulb on the street light over there where he parked his car. And if you flip that switch on, then he knew he better come to the light plant, because he had a call over there going. So times have really changed.
I remember that. I'm going to ask you a question too about the light bulb. Do they, when they have a fire, years ago when they had a fire, they would blow so many whistles for, they had the town quartered off. Do they still do that? They don't do that.
They were fire wards, they used to call them, wasn't it?
Well, I know, but, you know, they'd have the regular, then if they would 1, 2, 3, it was, then one page, so it would one, after it would be 4 like that, so people, evidently, they knew where at least what direction to head for, I guess.
Of course, we had one real good fireman too,
One?
Bill Walters.
Yeah.
Bill used to hear his old gravel truck go in before you'd hear the siren.
Way back in 1940, it was probably the 30s, late 30s. I remember when Aubrey's dad was street commissioner, among other things. And I was just a little kid. And this was after we lost the Northwestern Power and we built our own utilities. And Ray LaFoy was out painting the new light poles. They had been orange and he was painting them green or vice versa. And I was just a little kid and I was sitting out there watching him and we got started talking and he says, who's your girlfriend? And I said, well, I don't have a girlfriend. And he said, well, let me tell you, he was just full of all kinds of advice. He said, let me give you some advice. He says, don't take any offense. Women are just like streetcars. You miss one and there's another one just around the corner. Never forget it. Let's see, there was something else. When I was 13, I started working at the Champlain station. Somebody mentioned Saturday nights in Milford, how Hal Clark would park his car downtown and so on. You know, a lot of the farmers would come in on Saturday night, and they'd come in about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, park the cars, go to the movie, go to the pool hall, go to someplace or other, and about 12 o'clock, they'd come into the Champlain station where I worked, and I was just 13 years old, and they'd have 2 or 3 wagon tires that were all covered with manure and so on, that were flat, and they wanted them fixed. This was midnight, you know. They'd been sitting in town all evening, but they just had to wait till they were ready to come. Oh yeah, I forgot, I gotta have those tires fixed.
Anybody else here?
I want to know first, is there any police officer or law enforcement officer here?
Uh-oh.
Well, no, we'll let you off today.
Very good. I may be ousted out of Milford after I get through this story. Anyway, way back in the 28s, when they had county basketball tournaments and that, there was no separation of A and B or C and D or whatever they are nowadays, but they were all in one basket. Everybody, Milford, Lake Park, Spirit Lake, Excelsior, which I am an alumni of, and this story came from my brother who was 96 when he passed away, and he was on the Excelsior basketball team in 1928 on the first team. He graduated from Excelsior in 31, and I'm a 36 graduate, but anyway, Milford and Excelsior were teamed up in this tournament. And of course, Milford was much bigger than Excelsior. Excelsior has no bricks there even anymore. But they started out and Milford got ahead quite a ways. So they pulled their first team out and put their B team in. And Excelsior got hot and the B team got cold, and so the B team was taken out and the A team came in, and Milford couldn't get hot. And Excelsior ended up beating Milford. I don't know what the score was, but Spirit Lake was encouraging Excelsior on because Milford was always beating Spirit Lake. But that's the story that my brother told. Is that right, brother? Thank you. Maybe some of you were here in 28.
I was 3 years old.
We used to have a county tournament
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Usually it was in Spirit Lake, but
Pretty much, yeah.
most of the time I thought, yeah.
I'm sticking my neck out because we've only been here 25 years. But I do have a story I'd like to share with you that just seems to me to fit. Every town, years ago, had somebody in town who wasn't playing with a full deck. And the little town of Audubon that I came from had old Bob. And old Bob had a team of white horses that were very thin. You could count every rib because he didn't feed them enough. He sat on the seat of an old wagon, drove up and down the alleys, and they paid him $25 a week to pick up the garbage. The mayor was standing on the corner one day, and old Bob comes to the corner with his team. He whips the lines, he says, "Get up, you heavy devils." The mayor thought, holy cow, I gotta turn him in, he's not feeding those horses. He walked down to the next corner, and here comes old Bob. "Get up, you heavy devils," every corner. So the mayor stopped him. Says, "Bob, I'm gonna have to turn you into the authority. You don't feed those horses." "Well, Mr. Mayor," he said, "if you had to help them to their feet every morning, you'd call them heavy devils too."
Somebody, gotta be somebody else here. Just sitting there waiting for him.
So I got one more little thing.
Just one more, Jerry.
That might bring some people thinking here. You know, one thing I always think of is the Milford Mail, our local newspaper that we had for so many years. And one thing about that paper that I always think of is I can hear the phone ringing now. And my mother answering the phone, and it'd be Mrs. Blanche Anderson. She'd say, "Any news?" And back then, I always thought of this kind of funny in a way, how what news people would put in the newspaper. You know, like Mom, I'd hear her say, "Well, yes, we went to Spencer for Sunday dinner to my daughter's place." You know, when I stop and think of stuff like that, I think, "Oh, geez, is that news really?" You know, but people, you know, or so-and-so went over to their neighbors or friends for card playing or a luncheon or, you know, the communities just seemed like they were more tied together, more unity back then, you know. And to be honest about it, I think a lot of people, they couldn't wait till the Milford Mail come out that week to read what people did do, you know. And I just saw that so many times.
I have to tell you, in World War II, Art Schoonen and Butch were the publisher and editor of the Milford Mail. And they sent every service person a paper. Didn't pay for it, just sent it to us. And I remember one place I was in China, and I get the Milford Mail, and of course I'd read through it and so on like that, and then when I got through it, I'd, you know, just throw it down or take it out and put it in the latrine. And there was a fellow there from New York, and he started reading the Milford Mail. And after all, you know, we were there, I know, for 4 months or so like that. After, you know, about 3 or 4 weeks or so, he started talking, and he said, "Well, I see the Myers had a party last night, and the Wallaces went over to the Johnson." You know, I mean, he just picked up on it. Everybody's like that. And, you know, if anybody listened to him, you'd think he grew up here. And one day he asked me, he said, excuse my language, he said, "Where the hell's Milford?" I said, "It's in Iowa." "Iowa? Where's Iowa?" He said, "You guys from Iowa know you had the same thing happen to you, but they'd say to you, 'Iowa? Is that where they grow potatoes?'" "No, that's Idaho." "Oh, it must be over there by Indiana." "No, that's Ohio." doctors, they'd say, how do you spell that? I said, I-O-W-A. They say, Iowa. Iowa? Says, you sure aren't from Iowa.
Aubrey, I spent a year in India in 1943 and a year in China in 44, and I didn't see you there.
I didn't see you either. I did see, I'll tell you, how small the world is. Some of you remember Mug Sheldon. You can tell a lot of stories about Mug Sheldon. But anyway, I was way up in a place called Liangshan, China, driving a truck. And one day I was told to go out to the line, and a C-46 was coming in. I was supposed to, take the load off of it. So I went out to the line, and I waited for this plane. It went out to a ramp, and it stopped. Props turned off, and I backed up to the door. The door opened, and who should step out? Mug Sheldon. Two guys from a little, on a map, like Milford, meeting halfway around the world. And I tell you, both of us were very, very surprised, I tell you. And Muggs and I, that's another story altogether. But we caught up on everybody for a while. Muggs was in the grade ahead. Things happened. The other day I had remember that we had two doctors years ago, the Cauldrons. There's a father and a son. And the son's name was Acacius Cauldron. He committed suicide, remember that? Some of you? Anyway, his daughter called me up the other day. They have a reunion for her family. They come here into the lakes every year. And I don't know, she gave me this little tidbit of information. She was born the same year I was, and she said, did you know that there were a kind of a bonus that year? There were 13 kids born in Milford in 1925. So I checked back. Man, that was a cold winter in 24. I'm just kidding.
Nobody mentions the depot around here. We bought our house from Art Clark, and we went, when we first moved in there, we were flushing the toilet and flushing the basement, so we had to start digging. Well, we needed to remodel the house and do some work with it. So the Historical Society was going to buy the depot. So we waited for them to make up their minds what they would do. Dean put in a price for the depot, $100 and some dollars and odd cents. We were getting ready to go on vacation, and all of a sudden we get a telephone call. You got the depot. So then, what do we have to do? We have to tear it down, get it out of there. So after our vacation, we came back and started to tear the depot down. And Mrs. Richter had told somebody, she says, they tell me there's a woman out there wearing coveralls in the depot. So she had to come over and see who that was, because it was me. And, but if you go by the house, the bricks on the front of the house is from the old depot. The roof board siding is from the depot. I have timbers in the house, that's from the depot. And there are bricks on the inside are from the depot. So.
Where's that? Where's the address?
Where's that? Right across from Jalaco's.
Your name is what?
Cecilia Barber.
Okay. And that was kind of follow on up with that. I'm trying to locate some of the old depots around here, and
I got a picture of that.
yeah, there's still the one from used to be one up on the north end of the lake. It was up at Triboja, and that depot is part of that Northland Motel up there on the west end of it. That's the old Triboja depot. The one at the Okoboja is part of Bob's repair up here at the back of the bank. What's his last name?
Yeski?
Yeah. He has incorporated part of the old Okoboja depot into his house there. And the Orleans depot is on Hill Avenue, about the third or fourth house going north there from the inn. So, now I often wonder what happened to the Milford Depot. I know, okay.
Aubrey,
Yeah.
the Lake Park Depot has become the Lake Park Museum. The Lake Park Historical Society has quite a endeavor going that, and they've got a prairie house, they've got the old jail there, which is great. I just think all these bad people ought to be stuck there for 2 or 3 nights. We wouldn't have to spend all this money on law enforcement.
The town of West Okoboji is trying to get their jail back. I think the Lens have it sitting over there someplace. There used to be the city hall for the town of West Okoboji. We finally made it bigger, but for years we only had it that small because that way we wouldn't have too many people come to the board meetings. That's what Howard said it.
Isn't the Spirit Lake Museum, the depot is for Spirit Lake?
Yeah.
Yes.
They tell me there's a Milford in every state in the United States. I think it came about because of the grain mills. And they could afford there to have water and that to make a mill. But that, Bill, our son, was historical. He used to think that every state had a town by the name of Milford. Sylvia's dad tells about, when I came here too, that the best house in Milford could be bought for $600. There was a time, but not many people had $600. It was tough. I came here in 46 and started doing carpenter work with them. I think I did draw close, about 75 cents an hour to start with, and then finally got up to where I thought I was really making money. Got about $1.50. But I went to work for the Okoboji Dairy. And some of you remember the old Okoboji Dairy. And I feel kind of proud one way. I was the first one to ever deliver a carton paper milk in Milford. Everything was glass bottles. And you talked about old Sid Guest pulling people out. Sid pulled me out a good many times. And one morning, it was in February, the frost had gone out of the ground, and Oscar Margaret lived over in Pinhook. And used to come in the alley and circle up and come right up alongside the house and deliver the milk to Oscar's house. And anyway, as I pulled in, it was snowing pretty hard, and I dropped one wheel in Oscar's garden. Frost was out. And I was stuck. So I went and called Sid. He came. He had that old, what did he call that wagon? He had that Dodge. It was a military vehicle. But he run his bumper up against the apple tree, and he run his winch out, and he pulled me that far, but we still weren't out. Then he pulled up alongside Oscar's house, and he run his cable out, and he started pulling me, and he couldn't seem to pull me. So he went clear across the road. I think one of the Richter boys lived over there one time, but he tied himself to a tree, and he run the cable out, and he pulled by the full length of Oscar's garden. And if you know, well, not Oscar, but Sid, I should say, you don't tell Sid how to get you out, but he'd just drive off and leave. But he could have hooked onto me at the back of the alley and just lifted me back out of there, and then that would have been it. But he pulled me the full length of Oscar's garden. And a couple days later, I went in to pay him, and Oscar was not too happy about the furrow we had in his garden. But old Sid kind of laughed. He says, "You got the tater scud?"
I was kind of a little aghast when Milford started numbering the streets and putting alphabet, like that. Gee, that really doesn't give you much pizzazz, Like Spirit Lakes have a little more pizzazz to the name of the streets. Anyway, I wish they hadn't changed the name, and that was Broadway. Because Broadway, Milford developed from the railroad going west, and it started along there, woods and woods, and I think we ought to all take a kind of a day of prayer because Smith Lumber Company going out of business. They are, aren't they? And, you know, they've been in this town for well over 100 years. And that's kind of sad to see something like that. And Broadway went from there clear down to Ewing's Hotel. Remember Ewing's Hotel?
No.
No one remember Ewing's Hotel? Okay, well, it was down at the other end of the block and that. So a lot of the buildings were built right along Broadway, and then it was later that the highway came along and they started building along that way. So Milford really had two things. Another one kind of bugged me too is, I don't know, is Milford spelled right?
No,
Shouldn't it have two L's?
Mill.
It's from a mill, it ought to be M-I-L-L-F-O-R-D. Maybe the cheerleaders couldn't put another L in there or something. Also, another one that bugs me is, I don't know where this one came along, but they started calling Mill Creek down here, Milford Creek. I don't know who started that, but I'd like to hit them over the head with a ukulele or something.
I want to tell him something. You're talking about the Milford Mail, and my aunt is here today, Margie Boardman Robbins. She's 100 years old. And she grew up in Milford, but she moved away and lived in Washington, D.C. for many years. But she always got the Milford Mail delivered. And then, of course, if there was anything about her family, she cut it out and put it in a scrapbook, because she had lots of scrapbooks. And we were going through those a while back, and it said that my mother had driven up from the farm in Clay County to see her mother on Sunday and gotten snowed in. So I got mentioned. My brother and I were snowed in at my grandmother's house for 3 days, and this made the Milford Mail. Probably made my grandmother crazy, too.
Anybody else? Come on, be bashful here.
Well, I'm just gonna say, I think it's the Milford water that makes people live so long. Letitia Lawson, 115 years old. I think she just went to the nursing home, but she'd been in her own home for many years.
Well, I think that Milford water is good. I remember as a kid, my mother had on the south window had a kind of a fern and had water in this thing. And she would pour water out of the faucet in there. And every once in a while we would see something swimming around in there. So it must be good for us. Milford originally had a well, you know, and then about the early 1900s they decided that here's a great big lake up here, and they started bringing water down here. One of the things I said is I wrote one time that it was just, to me, heartwarming, and still does, when I come up from Spencer and I see the silhouette of Milford there, it just kind of grabs me. But I remember when I came home from the service and I could see the